महारानी की जय। रसानंदो राधा सरसव गुरालिंगन सुगो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी भवतु मे नमयाची राज्यम न सगणकमाणिक्य विभवम नयासेहं रम्याञ्जलजनकाम्यां परवधूं सदा काले काले ब्रह्मवदिना गीतचरितो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे हरत्वं संसारं दुर्धरम् असारं सुरपदे हरत्वं पावनं विदितम् अपरं यादवपदे अहो दीनेनादेहि शरणो विच्छिदमिदं जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी जन्नपदगामी भवतु मे नीलजले चन्द्रयान प्रभु जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी जय नीलजले चन्द्रयान प्रभु बलदेव जय बलदेवा जय बलदेव नीलजले कपूरानी जय सुभद्रा जय सुभद्रा मणि जय सुभद्रा Bye.
ISKCON BPT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Vishnu Paramacharya Acharya Ashtotra Srimati Srimati Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki Guru Parampara ki Sadgoswami Vrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Sago Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Gangamai Yamunamai Bhakti Dev Tulasi Maharani ki Mayapur Vrindavan Dham की पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की श्री श्री गुलाम नरसिंहदेव भगवान की श्री श्री राधा माधव की श्री श्री गुरुवायूर स्वामी की श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण टेम्पल प्रोजेक्ट की श्रीला प्रभुपाद नेशनल बुक रिसोर्स की all groups assembled devotees, all groups assembled devotees, all groups assembled devotees, all glories, all praise, all glory, Gauranga, Shishla Prabhupada.
ॐ अज्ञानातिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय नरसिंह श्री नरसिंह जय जय श्री नरसिंहदेव प्रह्लादेश जय पद्मा मुखपद्मा भृंगा उग्रं वीरं महाविष्णुं ज्वलन्तं सर्वतोमुखं नरसिंहं बीजनं भद्रं मृत्युर्नमाम्यहम्। ॐ नरसिंहाय नमः, ॐ महासिंहाय नमः, ॐ दिव्यसिंहाय नमः, ॐ महाबलाय नमः, ॐ उग्रसिंहाय नमः, ॐ महादेवाय नमः, ॐ स्तंभजाय नमः, ॐ उग्रलोचनाय नमः, ॐ रौद्राय नमः, ॐ सर्वाद्भुताय नमः, ॐ श्रीमनाय नमः, ॐ योगानंदाय नमः, ॐ त्रिविक्रमाय नमः, ॐ हरिणे नमः, ॐ कोलाहलाय नमः, ॐ चक्रिणे नमः, ॐ जयाय नमः, ॐ जयवर्धनाय नमः, ॐ पंजननाय नमः, ॐ परब्रह्माय नमः, ॐ अघोराय नमः, ॐ घोरविक्रमाय नमः, ॐ ज्वलन्मुगाय नमः, ॐ ज्वलन्मालिने नमः, ॐ महाज्वलाय नमः, ॐ महाप्रभुवाय नमः, ॐ नीतिलक्षाय नमः, ॐ सहस्राक्षाय नमः, ॐ सुनिरीक्षाय नमः, ॐ प्रतापनाय नमः, ॐ महादंशाय नमः, ॐ जितप्रज्ञाय नमः, ॐ चण्डकोपिने नमः, ॐ सदाशिवाय नमः, ॐ हिरण्यकशिपुतंसिने नमः, ॐ दैत्यदानवपाञ्जननाय नमः, ॐ गुणभद्राय नमः, ॐ महाभद्राय नमः, ॐ बलभद्राय नमः, ॐ सुभद्राकाय नमः, ॐ करलाय नमः, ॐ विकरलाय नमः, ॐ विकर्ताय नमः, ॐ सर्वकार्तिकाय नमः, ॐ शिशुमाराय नमः, ॐ त्रिलोकात्माय नमः, ॐ ईशाय नमः, ॐ सर्वेश्वराय नमः, ॐ विभुवाय नमः, ॐ पैवरम्बराय नमः, ॐ दिव्याय नमः, ॐ अच्युताय नमः, ॐ काविने नमः, ॐ माधवाय नमः, ॐ मधोक्षजाय नमः, ॐ अक्षराय नमः, ॐ सर्वाय नमः, ॐ वनमालिने नमः, ॐ वरप्रदाय नमः, ॐ विश्वम्भराय नमः, ॐ अद्भुताय नमः, ॐ भाव्याय नमः, ॐ श्रीविष्णवे नमः, ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः, ॐ अनगस्त्राय नमः, ॐ नगस्त्राय नमः, ॐ सूर्यज्योतिने नमः, ॐ सुरेश्वराय नमः, ॐ सहस्रबाहुवाय नमः, ॐ सर्वज्ञाय नमः, ॐ सर्वसिद्धिप्रदायकाय नमः, ॐ वज्रवंशाय नमः, ॐ वज्रनगाय नमः, ॐ महानन्दाय नमः, ॐ परन्दवाय नमः, ॐ सर्वमन्त्रैकरूपाय नमः, ॐ सर्वयन्त्रविदारमाय नमः, ॐ सर्वतन्त्रात्मकाय नमः, ॐ अव्यक्ताय नमः, ॐ सुव्यक्ताय नमः, ॐ भक्तवत्सलाय नमः, ॐ वैशाखशुक्लबुधोत्ताय नमः, ॐ शरणागतवत्सलाय नमः, ॐ उदारकीर्तिने नमः, ॐ ओम पुण्यात्माय नमः। ओम महात्माय नमः। ओम चंद्रविक्रमाय नमः। ओम वेदात्रेयाय नमः। ओम प्रभुज्याय नमः। ओम भगवानाय नमः। ओम परमेश्वराय नमः। ओम श्रीवत्संगाय नमः। ओम जगद्वापिने नमः। जगन्मायाय नमः। ओम जगत्पालाय नमः। ओम जगन्नाथाय नमः। ओम महाकाय नमः। ओम त्रिविरूपप्रदाय नमः। ओम परमात्माय नमः। ओम परंज्योतिने नमः। ओम निर्गुणाय नमः। ओम निर्विशेषणे नमः। ओम परतत्वाय नमः। ओम परंधामाय नमः। ओम सच्चिदानंद विग्रहाय नमः। ओम लक्ष्मी नरसिंहाय नमः। ओम सर्वात्माय नमः। ओम धीराय नमः। ओम प्रहलाद पालकाय नमः। ओम उग्रं वीरं महाविष्णुं ज्वलन्तं सर्वतोमुखं नरसिंहं बीजनं भद्रं मृत्युर्नमाम्यहम्। जय नरसिंह श्री नरसिंह जय जय श्री नरसिंहदेव। प्रहलादेश जया पद्मा मुख पद्मा भृंगा। नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रहलादलाददायिने रण्याकाशीतोर्वक्षः शिलटङ्गानकालाये यो नरसिंहा परतो नरसिंहा यदो यदो यामि ततो नरसिंहा कभी नरसिंहा हृदये नरसिंहा नरसिंहमदिं चरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरेण्यः अद्भुतशृङ्गा तलिदा हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा जय केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे। श्री श्री प्रहलाद नरसिंहदेव भगवान की, श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महाराज की, श्री सुखदेव गोस्वामी की हरि बोल। श्लोक से श्लोक की जय। राम Krishna
सत्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are going to read from where we stopped yesterday, sort of a continuation. Yesterday we discussed something about the Brahmanas and cows, Krishna's particular statement here. So here we will read from text 11, chapter 16, canto 3, 3.16.11. ये ब्राह्मणा मयि धिया क्षिपतो अर्चयन्तस्तुष्यदृढः स्मितसुदोक्षितपद्मपत्राः वान्यानुरागकलयात् मज्जवद् गृह्णन्तः सम्बोधयन्ति हमिवाहम् उपाहृतस्तैः. On the other hand, they captivate my heart, who are gladdened in the heart and who, Their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. Purport. It has been observed in many instances in the Vedic scriptures that when the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, the person who is cursed does not take it upon himself to treat the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas in the same way. There are many examples of this. For instance, the sons of Kubera were cursed by the great sage Narada, did not seek revenge in the same harsh way, but submitted. Here also, when Jaya and Vijaya were cursed by the four Kumaras, they did not become harsh towards them. Rather, they submitted. That should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One may sometimes be faced with a grievous situation created by a Brahmana, but instead of meeting him with a similar mood, one should try to pacify him with a smiling face and mild treatment. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas should be accepted as earthly representatives of Narayana. Nowadays, some foolish persons have manufactured the term Daridra Narayana, indicating that the poor man should be accepted as the representative of Narayana. But in Vedic literature, we do not find that poor men should be treated as representatives of Narayana. Of course, those who are unprotected are mentioned here, but the definition of this phrase is clear from the Shastras. The poor man should not be unprotected, but the Brahmana should specifically be treated as a representative of Narayana and should be worshipped like him. It is specifically said that to pacify the Brahmanas, one's face should be lotus like. A lotus like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. In this respect, the example of the fathers being angry at the son and the sons trying to pacify the father with smiling and sweet words is very appropriate. तन्मे स्वभृत्तुरवसायमलक्षमाणौ युष्मद्व्यतिक्रमगतिं प्रतिपद्य सद्यः भूयो ममान्तिकम् ईतां तद् अनुग्रहो मे यत्कल्पताम् अचिरतो भृत्तयोर्विवासः. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. From this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servitor back into Vaikuntha. This incident, therefore, proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. The case of Jaya and Vijaya is not a fall down, it is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back again to the Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences. Although that suffering is temporary, the Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Brahmavacha atatasyo shatim devim rishikulyam saraswatim nasvadya manyu dashtanam tucha atmapi atripyata. Brahma continued, even though the sages had been bitten by the serpent of anger, their souls were not satiated with hearing the Lord's lovely and illuminating speech, which was like a series of Vedic hymns. Satim vyadaya shanavato laghvim guruartha gakvaram vigahya gada gambhiram navidustat chikirishitam. The Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import and its most profound significance. The sages heard it with wide open ears and pondered it as well. But although hearing, they could not understand that he intended to do. Should be understood that no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead in speaking. There is no difference between the Supreme Person and his speeches. For he stands on the absolute platform. The sages tried with wide open ears to understand the words from the lips of the Supreme Lord. But although his speech was very concise and meaningful, the sages could not completely comprehend what he was saying. They could not even comprehend the purport of the speech or what the Supreme Lord wanted to do, nor could they understand whether the Lord was angry or pleased with them. Om Tat Sat Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamakyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sagitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakandritam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namini Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Yadvaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we read these wonderful shlokas and the purports that Prabhupada has given here. The Lord continues to glorify those who respect the Brahmanas. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. So the Lord is speaking the glories of Brahmanas. In other words, he is speaking the glories of the four Kumaras indirectly. And he wants both the Kumaras and the doorkeepers, the Dwarapalakas, to hear this. What do I think about the importance of Brahmanas? That should be understood so that the doorman can understand that. Now, you can see that it's mentioned here that whatever happens, this is a very odd situation that between two sets of transcendentalists, there is a problem. So this problem is not only there in ISKCON, it's there even in Vaikuntha. That two of them can disagree. You see, what has happened is they have been stopped. The sticks or the spears were used and said, no, you cannot go. That was very insulting. Why? Because they already been through 6 doors. Nobody asked any question. They were actually very old by age, but their bodies were like small children and they were naked. They were just naked. And small kids. So it's not that they are small kids, they're actually very senior people with great realizations. So after going through 6 doorways, they were stopped on the 7th doorway. So that is not normal. Nobody told us anything for the 6 doorways. And when you're on the final doorway just waiting to see the Lord, where do you stop us? That's the building. That's how it is built up. We already entered Vaikuntha. We are in the precincts of Vaikuntha. And then we enter it. Nobody says anything. And we are right about to get into the Lord's place, and you stop us. So somebody can say, that that place alone entry is not allowed for anybody and everybody. That place is only for his devotees or private, super confidential devotees. For persons like the four Kumaras, the other areas of, you can give all sorts of explanations for why they came through the six and could not come through the seven. However, the point is that the doorman should have allowed them inside, is what is the statement of the Lord himself. And he agrees that they have done an offense by stopping you. And he comes to their representation and begs forgiveness from the Brahmanas. Then he glorifies Brahmanas. Then he says that you must respect them because that's the way you can please me. And you have not done that. You have failed in doing that. So even in Vaikuntha, you can fail in rendering devotional service properly. In other words, your individuality is carried with you, and your individuality at any time can put you at risk. You can at any time do something by your choice and make it very difficult for yourself. That should be understood. So Prabhupada is saying here that there are many examples of this, for instance, sons of Kuvera, etc., which were cursed by four Kumaras. They did not become harsh towards them, rather they submitted. That should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One may sometimes be faced with a grievous situation created by a Brahmana, but instead of meeting him with a similar mood, one should try to pacify him with a smiling face and mild treatment. So we are all put into such situations where we would have a senior devotee or a junior devotee creating an awkward situation. So it's mentioned here, you should keep a lotus-like face and say the truth, not be harsh, not be interested in reacting similarly. Even though that person who's senior to you has said something harsh to you, you shouldn't actually reciprocate like that. This is a very important instruction, because later, Prabhupada is saying in the other purport here, he said that the Lord is always, it is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and his devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. So even if you are in Vaikuntha, you can't assume that I am in Vaikuntha, I cannot be doing wrong, and nothing can happen to me. That obviously is not correct. Even in Vaikuntha, if you do something, you'll have to face the difficulty. It is just that it happens to be Vaikuntha, so it will be temporary, and the Lord will personally take care of correcting you and setting you right. So it will be very short, temporary. So the point here is that we should not think that we are devotees and we can do anything and it will not be taken as fault. That's number one. Number two is we are devotees already, so you become lax about controlling your mind, controlling your senses, controlling your words. No, that's not allowed. You will have to suffer the consequences. It's a very important lesson for us. So, Vaikuntha atmosphere means, since Krishna is in your consciousness intensely, it's not that you stop laboring to be Krishna conscious. This default wiring is there in us. Once I go to the spiritual world, I don't have to worry about it. No, you have to be worried all the time that you may not actually have to commit something, if not a fall down. It says that they did not fall down, They were temporarily sent and brought back. That is the Lord's special mercy. So maybe one thing you can expect is if we did something wrong to with a devotee, we can always, please forgive me, you can ask. And if you settle it up, the Lord is pleased with you because of your good behavior. And if you didn't behave properly, you should also not mind that you're being repaired and then brought back. In other words, many things that happen to us could be a reaction to our behavior towards devotees. And it's a temporary shake-up, and Krishna will get you back. But that shake-up is pretty, what do you call, excruciating experience. To be temporarily disconnected is a great fear. Don't think that Jaya and Vijaya were very happy about it. No, the soul is always going to feel the disconnect, always going to feel pain because of the disconnect with the Lord. So you are asked to go through a disconnect. It's something like you are asked to stay away from your wife and your children for 2 months as a punishment. Definitely, it's disconnected. Like some people got stuck during the coronavirus. Family got separated for 6 months. And this cannot come here because he had to be in another country and he couldn't fly back. There were no flights. And then some of them couldn't, when they came back also, they were quarantined. It took a very long time to meet with the family members. I saw a video of a child meeting with the father after a long time, to months together. And the child, as soon as see the father, starts crying and rushing to the father. And the father also starts crying, and both of them embrace each other. It's suffering to be separated. Where is my father? Where is my father? And the father is saying, where is my child? I want to see my child. It's suffering to be separated, especially if you're already connected in great affection and love. So when we are affectionately oriented towards the Lord and we are placed in Vaikuntha, theoretically assuming, if we make a mistake and that needs a temporary correction, then that's taken. But the question here, some people ask is, how is it possible that in Vaikuntha they made a mistake? This type of idealistic thinking, that because you're in Vaikuntha, automatically you never make a mistake, is something that is being crashed here. You're always subject to being a soul who is dependent on the Lord, and a soul, because he is tiny, weeny, dependent on the Lord, he is capable of committing mistakes. But why in the atmosphere of Vaikuntha? Yes, even in the atmosphere of Vaikuntha, even while executing devotional service, you may make a mistake, and you may quickly come to know it's a mistake. And you may regret it quickly. It won't be difficult for you because there's not so much false ego actually challenging you. So it's easier for us. So that's why you see here the Vaikuntha Vasis, Dwarapalakas, were quickly able to accept, yes, we did wrong. Yes, we did wrong. We should have recognized something about you. That's a slip we made. No, how could they have understood anyway? Their job was to stop people, so they did their job. Those are theoretically correct statements. But we should also know how to apply these rules and regulations properly. When there were very great sages like this, the right thing would have been that you pay obeisances to them, you welcome them, take their blessings, and say, how can I serve you? May I be able to do something for you? No, we came to see Narayana. Please wait, I'll do the needful. I'll go and tell him and try to bring you into their audience. And then gives you a chance to actually make them feel good and also take care of your job as a person who is to admit and not admit certain types of people. You can pose it to the law. Many things you can do apart from just straight away stop it. We are Narayana's doormen. You can go inside. We don't care who you are. We do our job. So that is where that you may think, oh, that's just a small mistake here. Well, it's a small mistake in the material world, and maybe it's not a mistake at all. But in the spiritual world, you're supposed to be knowing more than that. And you're supposed to be very sensitive to all these things, especially with Brahmanas. That's the statement made here by Narayana. See? So, this is a very subtle point. But the Brahmanas, these Kumaras, they understood that you should not be here if you did not know this. You are not fit to be here if you did not know this. And Narayana comes and concurs, yes, they have done a mistake. But it is mentioned that Narayana came to stop both of them from committing more and more offenses to each other. That's mentioned by some acharyas. That the cursing that they had to undergo, and if there was a counter cursing, it would have been even worse. But since it is Vaikuntha, the counter cursing did not occur. But in Daksha's sacrifice, you will see there was cursing and counter cursing, and this and that happened, and finally Daksha got a goat's head. It was disastrous because the Brahmanas there cursed, and the Brahmanas were cursed. That never will you have any opponents hereafter. It's cursing and counter cursing. That's the material atmosphere. But in Vaikuntha, you can see that they accepted the curse. Devotees will respond like that. Swarga apavarga narikeshu api tulyartha darshinaha Narayana parayana sarvena kutaschana bibhyati. Same thing happened. Lord Shiva's spouse Parvati saw that Chitraketu is laughing. That my husband is making me sit on his lap. So he's laughing. But he's laughing in a different sense. But then she did not take it properly, and so she told him, you need to be sent down or become an asura. It's very similar. Chitraketu just accepted that curse. He simply surrendered. He said, oh my dear mother, whatever you want to punish me, I'm willing to accept that. And seeing his wonderful behavior of accepting that curse given by his wife and succumbing to it, Lord Shiva said, Narayana parayana sarve na kutaschana vidyati. You see the devotees how they are. They are not afraid. Swarga apavarga narakeshu api tulyartha darshina. You send them to Swarga, you send them to Naraka. Both of them are equal to them. Why? Because they are fixed. Narayana parayana sarve. They are fixed in Narayana. Right? Na kutaschana vidyati. They are not afraid. Tulyartha darshina. They really don't care. You send them to Narakaloka, become an asura, it doesn't matter. And in an asura's body, Vratrasura, as he came, was brilliant show of his devotion to Krishna. It's such a combination. An asura's body, and Indra is trying to kill him, and he remains a devotee. In fact, he taunts Indra, I'm going back to Godhead, what about you? What about you? So that is the situation with devotees, because it's about internal stuff, it's about consciousness and being fixed in love of Krishna. It's very different. So you'll see a similar thing here in Vaikuntha, that both Jaya and Vijaya accepted the curse and said, we have done wrong. We missed it. It's very subtle, but we missed it. Looking at, we deserve it. And Narayana also comes and says, yes, only thing I ask is that they should be able to come back. I want to reinstate them. That was a very interesting intervention. Yes, they have done wrong. See the brilliant, sophisticated behavior of Lord Narayana. That he comes very pleasingly and shows his form and cools down the Kumaras. And it cools down both the doormen also. If the Lord is there to protect me, why I have to worry? Then he says, okay, you have done that. Right thing only in cursing. But he softens it by saying that they will come back. And after that type of a darshan they had, the Kumaras are not going to say, no, we don't want that to happen. They did not say anything for it. They were simply absorbed in the Lord's form. And then he went ahead to glorify Brahmanas and his devotees. And he gave special blessing to both of them. So the situation became completely settled. So in Vaikuntha, it's mentioned that there is no chance of these types of emotions coming up. Rarely it comes up. A visitor like the Kumaras come, it has happened. But it doesn't prevail there regularly. We read in the kingdom of God description that happens before this, that everybody is focused on the Supreme Lord and service to Him. And they don't normally allow any such thought. But the description showed that there are chances, if they want to, they can allow such thoughts to come inside. They have the choice always. But it is so absorbing, the Lord and the beautiful Vaikuntha place and everything. It is so conducive and it's so much permeated by Krishna consciousness. There's very little chance. But by your own volition, you may want to. And that's what's happened here. By the doorman's own volition, without much deep thinking, they sort of stop the sages. When we do mechanical devotional service, we are in trouble. We are in trouble when we do mechanical devotional service. We have to be consciously doing devotions. I'm not saying that the doormen were Krishna unconscious when they did that. That's not my statement. But you have to know who are these sages. Should I go and ask? I don't know the importance. They have come to see the Supreme Lord. They may be somebody close to Him. How do I know? How can I presume and assume that I know who they are? No. I know we are Dwarapalakas. But we should also know that we don't have absolute supreme authority over everybody and anybody. We are just Dwarapalakas. We can't extrapolate our authority to make it supreme and sovereign. No, that only the Lord has got. So it's better for me to actually inquire and tell. So at the most, we could have said, welcome, very happy to have your darshan. May we know how we can help you. Can we hear something from you? Something like that. Respect. See, respect should be given even if you think the person is self-realized. That's what I understand here. How is it that self-realized Kumaras need respect and they disrespect, so they get angry? Well, it's possible that Prabhupada explains here the anger of liberated people is different from the anger of a conditioned soul. Anger of the conditioned soul is anger because of having stopped the sense gratification, subtle or gross. The anger of a devotee or an anger of an exalted, liberated person like the four Kumaras is to set right things. It is not ordinary anger of, sense gratification being stopped. No. No, you cannot be doing this in Vaikuntha. You don't fit in here at all. It's wrong. You go and get repaired, get punished. That was right. It's a very subtle point. That was right. And that's why Narayana came and agreed, yes, what you've done is correct. What you have done is correct. It's okay. Just that a little concession and requesting that they come back after 3 births. When I will be their enemy, they will be my enemy, and I will be able to reciprocate with them and bring them back. So this is fortune uh, that Krishna is holding the Kumaras, protecting them. He's also respecting these Brahmanas. It is mentioned that the 4 Kumaras achieved Shanta Bhakti only. They didn't achieve Vatsalya, Shaka, Rasa, Madhurya Rasa and all that. Because they were used to Brahman realizations. And their first exposure to Krishna like this put them in the first level of devotion, Shanta Bhakta. Whereas these Dwarapalakas, they may be already at least in Dasya Bhava to be in Vaikuntha. And still they were given that particular treatment. And Narayana said, you accept it to them. And they willingly accepted it. And they were able to render service to Narayana by being his enemies and give the Lord Virya Rasa. Right? So we should understand these things in a proper context. We should not assume that Vaikuntha thinks if I go, since it's a perfect place, everything will be perfect. No, that's a perfect place. You are not supposed to assume that I am perfect because Vaikuntha is perfect. Because Vaikuntha is perfect, I am perfect. That's an assumption we can make. No, I can always be subject to imperfection at any point of time. Even after Brahma went and met with Krishna, he did thousands of years of meditation and focusing. And then he got to see Krishna and the spiritual world and everything. Still, there is Brahma Vimohana Leela. Still, he went behind his daughter Vak during creation. So still these things can happen to him. Of course, somebody can argue that it's a material world he is in, the material nature he is dealing with. So these things can happen. But an exalted personality like Brahma, anything can happen. So to similarly in the spiritual world for the liberated spirit soul, anything can happen. The choice is yours. It's not because of the atmosphere, it's not because of the Supreme Lord. You have individuality. And that individuality can come to play anytime. And because of that, certain things can happen. Right? So these pastimes illustrate very beautifully many things. One, how the Lord is protecting the Brahmanas. They may not be his pure devotees immediately, but still he holds them in high respect. Vamanadev, he respected Shukracharya very much. And he came back and met Shukracharya after installing Rasatala, Bali Maharaj, and glorified Shukracharya for his being a Brahmana and doing certain things. Even the priest, Brahmanical priest, and the guru of the Asuras was praised by the Supreme Lord. So what to speak of the Lord praising Sanaka, Sanatana and the 4 Kumaras and assuaging them, making them feel fine and making them leave with a very good impression. So how the Lord is very wonderfully managing the situation is something interesting. First he appears and shows his asset of the form, cools down them. Then he accepts that they have done fault. Then he goes to say that I can punish myself for it for Britya Aparado Swamino Danda. When my servant has done something wrong, the punishment should come on the Swami, on the master. He says that. Then he very wonderfully does a negotiation of these two people together like this. And he makes it softer, the punishment on his representatives, but takes the punishment. And in this way, he creates a beautiful impression in the four Kumaras, so much so that they become devotees. So, in one swell swoop, he actually achieves so many things together. That's the meaning of the Supreme Lord. That's the meaning of the Supreme Lord. And his representatives should learn from that also how to act in difficult situations. Lord Chaitanya very brilliantly showed that in many such situations in the material world with his devotees. The attack of Ramachandra Puri on the Lord himself, how he condescended, respected Ramachandra Puri, who is his Guru's god brother, paid away. How Ramachandra Puri criticized the Lord, still he didn't react to anything. He didn't show that I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No, he just remained Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the eyes of Ramachandra Puri, he remained a sannyasi and he was doing his sannyas duties properly. And he dealt with the situation so nicely that Ramachandra Puri left unable to actually find a fault with Lord Chaitanya. He came to find a fault, but he did this and that, but really could not find a fault, although he accused him of certain things, right? So these are interesting things to learn. They are not like 1 + 1 is equal to 2, or they're not like black and white. They may be a little gray and white and black together here and there. So life is like that. It's an averaging. It's a good averaging of certain movements. So even in Vaikuntha, I'm happy to hear that it's not like super perfect. Only in the material world we expect these type of things and work towards it, and sometimes people do it at the expense of personality and personalism. In the material world, perfection is attained in material activities by sacrificing relationships, by sacrificing personalism, by sacrificing a recognition for living, breathing, conscious, living individuals. We minimize that personality. So, in many ways, we achieve perfection. But the idea of perfection, which has got all other things accommodated in it, like Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, seems to be more appealing, natural, organic, and possible. But if you tell me that Vaikuntha should be spick and span and perfect and everybody should be walking in left, right, attention, everything should be very good, in our own material impression, we have that. It's not like that. It's perfect, definitely. It's perfect in its natural, uh, you know, atmosphere. Yeah, living entities are Tatashta Shakti, and they can go off a little bit. They'll be swaying a little bit here and there, but the average is they're pretty much stuck. That seems to be more possible and realistic in terms of handling personalities. But if you want a personality to be like a straight edge, then you're doing something to him and depersonalizing him to some extent. So I am happy to hear that, oh, yeah, possible, quite realistic, that the doorman could have gone off a little bit. Quite realistic that even the four Kumaras went off a little bit by knocking them down, the Dwarpalakas, a little bit. Quite possible. Quite possible that Krishna came and adjusted these two things very nicely, so beautifully. And that seems to be the highlight, right? So we should not think like Prabhupada says here, there's no anger in the spiritual world. Why? Anger can be utilized in the service of the Lord.